What's going on YouTube? 0088 here, and I'm about to talk some diversity in Game of Thrones. So yeah, let's go through this. If you watch my previous video about the Fire and Blood and the cancellation of the Long Night and how excited I am about this, I mentioned something about not wanting Targaryens, black Targaryens with white hair. And there is an interesting thing about, you know, medieval storylines, and now we're in 2019, how representation and diversity is being really pushed to the forefront of media and TV and film and all that. And it just seems, look, like I said in my previous video, representation and diversity is important. It is good to see yourself on screen, and especially in like a big mainstream thing. But it has to be organic. It has to make sense within the plot. Representation is not the first and foremost thing. It's not the most important thing when telling a story. Diversity is not the most important thing. Diversity of characters is more important even. Like, representation and diversity of race, you know, is probably like 5th, if not 10th important thing. And when you're telling a story. I went to see the movie Hacksaw Ridge, which is based on a true life event, directed by Mel Gibson. One of the best films I've seen in a long time. That was a long time ago I watched. I think I've done a review. Have I done a review on that? I think I did a review on that. I know I definitely did a reaction on that. Go check that out. But yeah, that film blew me away. And me, a black man, I noticed. I didn't notice while I was watching, but after the fact I thought about it, and because I was so engrossed with the story, I noticed I don't think there was one single black person in that movie. Everybody, I don't think there was even any other kind of race. Like, literally every single person was white in that film, but it was still an amazing film, like still an amazing story. The representation isn't needed in every single form of media, you know. And if you do want representation, we need more black people. Need to write more black stories. We don't need to take white stories and then turn them black. It doesn't work like that. That's lazy and just stupid. But anyway, I'm gonna give you a great example of why you can't force diversity and representation into everything by this guy's video. His name is The Dragon Demands. I think he's like a Game of Thrones YouTuber. I might have come across his videos by accident a few times. I love watching Game of Thrones stuff. People talk about Game of Thrones on YouTube, but he talks about this this leak that happened. He seems to have known about it from a year ago, and apparently they cast black people into the Long Night prequel that's now been cancelled. And obviously the Long Night is like the beginnings of Westeros, the beginnings of Game of Thrones, kind of. It was set 1,000 years in the past, way before Aegon's conquest. And it shows about the first men coming into Westeros, taking over the Children of the Forest, and the White Walkers coming in for the first time. And then, you know, the Children of the Forest created the White Walkers. You know that from the Game of Thrones show. They're fighting the Children of the Forest, but then the Children of the Forest create the White Walkers. Then the Children of the Forest and the First Men join forces against the White Walkers and push them out. And they become like sort of friends. That's a long night. But anyway, let's talk about this and talk about why race and diversity and forcing it into mediums when it's not necessary can be an issue. But yeah, let's listen to what he has to say.
The problem is they jumped into spur of the moment and just casually, oh, let's get something based on hype without thinking out obvious problems with the setting. They did this based on the pitch and not like, how would we have racial diversity in Bronze Age Westeros, which is like Celtic Druid Britain. There wouldn't be black people there. So
you hear that? So basically they realized, oh shit, we need to put black people in this somehow. But let's just keep hearing it. There's a lot more.
The way they shoehorned them in is really racist. So
I
was told this by someone with access to series Bibles for the other prequels, and they told me it verbally. They didn't give me solid information, but they told me other leaks that turned out to be true. So they had no reason to lie to convince me this is a terrible idea. I do want to stress, just to be honest with you, my source may have been mistaken or misled based on the telephone game rumors. It might have just been, or it could have been an early idea they had that they later dropped. Particularly because I was told this in mid-2018, And that was over a year ago. It was almost a year before they even filmed it. Much could have changed during that time period. So, with all that build-up, here is what I was told was wrong with how they shoehorned black people into it. Their fix for blindly jumping into this, to get racial diversity into it, was to cast only black people to play Children of the Forest.
You see, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, they were so fixated on putting black people in this show that they were like, shit, man, let's make them pick Children of the Forest. Like, this goes back to a whole history of where, you know, there were black people and other people of colour or whatever minorities were saying that, why do we only get cast as aliens, or things that are painted green, or things that don't get to show that we're actually black, or whatever else? Well, I mean, it is a weird one, because, like, if you're going to do a story about medieval times where it was majority white people, like, literally, like, based on, you know, the 1400s in Europe, it's going to be majority white people, isn't it? So, and then if you want representation, and you want black people or any other person of colour in this world where they wouldn't exist, not yet anyway, they probably can only play some kind of mythical creature or something like that. And it sounds kind of fucked up. But you can't have your cake and... me as a black man, to get to the point, I would rather we just not be in it than we only in it but as some kind of weird alien or creature or something. It's so stupid. And this guy's going to go on to talk about how they could have actually had genuine black characters with arcs and show the representation of our race and all that kind of stuff legitimately, because there's characters that are from the Summer Isles, there's characters that exist that are all different kinds of races in George R. R. Martin's universe, and they could have integrated them into the story, but they didn't choose to do that, according to this guy. And again, I don't know how true this all is. I'm just hearing it off this guy's video, but whether it's true or not, you know, like, this is one of the issues where you try and force diversity into things that doesn't really need it, or doesn't work with it. Like, you just don't bother forcing it. I'd rather not be in it, like Hacksaw Ridge. Let's continue anyway.
Why didn't you just have Summer Islander merchant ships visiting prehistoric Westeros, which the World Book says they did? They said Summer Islanders have been visiting our coasts since the...
They don't go for the...
But I guess they wanted to keep the narrative focused.
Like he said, I guess they wanted to keep the narrative focused. Like, the problem is, the reason why they don't have that is because they don't like to work. They like to make it the easiest way possible. If you want to do genuine diversity, if you want to appear woke, if you want to progress, like genuine woke, not even that kind of woke, get rid of the quotation marks, actual woke and progressive, and you want to actually change the way the media or the way Hollywood or the way films looks at people of colour or minorities, then you got to work for it. You can't just find the easiest routes and then expect all the pats on the back. Nah, like, that's not what Martin Luther King did. That's not what Malcolm X did. They had to work hard to get to where we are today. We're not even like where we should be yet. You know, they had to work hard for that shit. And if you want to be like them, if you want to be activists like them, then you got to work hard for it and get genuine representation. Because this is just another racist way. Just like, they don't even realize they're being racist. You know, like, they don't want to work for it. And to work for it, you have to have genuine characters from the Summer Isles, people that you can actually believe in, that you can actually root for, that you can actually see, that are supposed to be in the narrative, and they don't feel like they're tacked on, or they don't feel fake, you know. But anyway, let's continue.
The truly insane thing is point 2, which is jaw-dropping.
Yeah, obviously, listen to this.
I pointed this out to my source. Well, if you're casting black people as Children of the Forest, we already saw those in Game of Thrones itself in season 6.
So now they're retroactively trying to change the law.
Prosthetic makeup. They're these green guys. They're elves. They're not human. And, I mean, in the books, they look even more non-human. They have non-human posture, they're smaller, they have, like, cat eyes and claws instead of fingernails. It's even the actress who played the main child of the forest in Season 6, Leaf, that was played by an ethnically Japanese woman. You know, she's under...
I had no idea it was played by a Japanese woman. I thought it was a white girl. That's how much the race is hidden with all that makeup and stuff. This is what I'm talking about, man. People always try and call me a coon and that. People always try and say, oh, why are you against race changing and that. This is what I'm talking about. This is what they do. They don't care about representation or whatever. They just care about the trend of representation. They don't actually care. If they genuinely cared about representation, they wouldn't even be trying to tell stories like Game of Thrones. They would look deep into African lore. They would look deep into black culture and try grab those stories and tell those stories, new stories, fresh stories. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Let's hear the other thing that's terrible that they did allegedly.
The solution they came up with was a retcon that the children of the forest at this time are humans. They look human, they are human. Specifically, they look like black humans. This ethnic group of black humans who were the indigenous inhabitants of Westeros. The show already established that they're elf guys by thousands of years later, when Bran meets them. And, well, to explain this discrepancy, they would later show that all the black humans had a magical curse that turned them all into monster gremlin elf guys.
No wonder it got cancelled, man.
So those are the two things that, oh no, we picked a prequel that doesn't have black people in it. Just cast them as the indigenous children of the forest, but they're elf guys. Say there was a magical curse that turned them into elves. I almost didn't believe this, but this is a...
So not only are they forcing black people into a story, into roles they don't need to be in, they don't even need to force them into these roles as the children of the forest, and they knew they couldn't have them looking like these monstrous children, all black people looking like these weird creatures. They couldn't do that because, you know, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Either you just do that and that's how you represent the black people, which is probably pretty bad, or you just have no black people in it, which is what I would have done. Or, better yet, have black people be actual black people from, you know, the Summer Isles that George R. R. Martin intended from his source material. That's probably the best thing you could have done. And it's what I said in my previous video about the Targaryen, about having like Summer Isle characters and Dornish characters in the Fire and Blood prequel. But in this situation, they're going to have them be black and then have them magically transform into the ones that we know from the show, the original Game of Thrones show. So they're retconning the Children of the Forest from George R. R. Martin's original lore. The reason for all of these changes is because of skin color and race. Because they need to have black main characters. Like, you shouldn't need to fuck up a story so hard just to put diversity into it. It shouldn't be this hard, you know? Well, it is hard, but you're making it harder for yourselves. Instead of just... It's mad. They're trying to do something. They're trying to find a shortcut, but end up going around in circles anyway to get to diversity. When it's right in front of them, just add Summer Isle characters, you know? Like, it's so stupid. Like, why would you need to retcon the story just to fit black people into it? It's this hard. Come on, as black people, if you people in my comment section, you must see the weirdness in this. Like, you must see how stupid this is. Do you remember not being a kid and just waking up and watching a film or watching a cartoon and just loving that cartoon without needing to see a black character in it? And then if you did, I was like, oh my god, why can't there be a black person in it? Most of the black characters in those original shows, because they were original. They weren't forced, they weren't changed, they weren't retconned, they were just there. They existed as themselves. They weren't riding on any other white character's coattails or any other story. Like, if you're going to adapt stories from written years ago by old white men, you can't have your cake and eat it too, and expect all the characters to also be. You can have black characters that didn't exist in the original story, in the original lore. You know, you just have to tell new stories. But anyway, let's continue on with this. Getting close to the end of my point now.
A series Bible. And the other thing they told me was that it was going to be a very simplistic, like insultingly patronizing in terms of the racial story it was telling. They kept describing it to me as a patronizing Thanksgiving story. That rather than a complex, multifaceted thing like the Valyria prequel wants to do, they said it's Thanksgiving. That there's these indigenous people who are black humans uniting with essentially the white colonizers of their continent, the Starks and Lannisters, to fight off a common enemy.
So basically, the original story of The Long Night is the Children of the Forest, basically they're in Westeros, right? And then the First Men, basically white people, come in. Children of the Forest are black people now, apparently. They're all like these black tribe-like Africans, probably. This is the Long Night that they wanted to do, allegedly, according to this guy. And what was going to happen was the First Men come in, they fight the Children of the Forest, black people, and I just realised how bad this is, thinking about it, saying it out loud. And eventually the black people create White Walkers, right, like we saw, even though this wouldn't even worked. There's literally a flashback showing the Children of the Forest how they looked creating the White Walkers, unless all the black people transformed into these Children of the Forest. But anyway, they create the White Walkers, and then the White Walkers are fucking up the First Men, but then they're also fucking up the Children of the Forest, which are black people now. And we get three factions, and then all of a sudden the First Men and the black people that were hating each other with all these racial tensions join forces and kill the White Walkers, and then they make the pact. You know, the pact between the men and the Children of the Forest, the original Stark men and the Children of the Forest. And remember, these are black people now, apparently. And then they transform into the Children of the Forest and get all grotesque so it can fit in the narrative of the Game of Thrones. Tell me that doesn't sound stupid to you. No, what if this was actually the pilot? If this was actually they let this all the way through to the pilot, no wonder they cancelled it, because they must have thought it was a good idea in their heads when they're writing it down, but probably seeing the optics of it after, especially just after watching the original series, no wonder like it got cancelled. They're like, nah, this ain't gonna fly, fam. We just about got away with making Watchmen all about race. You know, the new Watchmen show with I can't remember her name now, but the main character's name is Angela. It's all they took Alan Moore's story and they've made it all about race and black versus white people somehow. There was barely anything to do with race relations in the original story, and it's so solidly about race in the new series. There's some good stuff, but anyway, this isn't a Watchmen review, so yeah, I don't know, man. Let's continue.
Only for the black people to then be magically cursed at the end because it's more important to explain a retcon. As my follower Tana, who is from Germany, put it, this sounds like something out of Mein Kampf. Like old school race theory of why do black people look different from our Aryan race? They must have been cursed. Or my follower Heather from Quebec pointed out, quote, it's like, did they realize this sounds like they're copying the story of the biblical curse of Ham used to justify slavery? Long Night was never the diversity prequel Empire of Ash was. Long Night usurped it. You've seen news sites saying, wow, Jane Goldman, a woman is in charge, there's going to be racial diversity. There's different kinds of diversity. Just because a white woman was showrunner was no guarantee it was a paragon of diversity. Just because a white woman is in charge doesn't mean it's going to have a lot of good roles for black women or black men. And the other stuff with Empire Bash, if they stressed half the writing staff isn't white, half the main characters aren't white, all this other stuff that, no, we went with Long Night.
So what this guy's trying to say is they had other options. There's places in Westeros called Sotheros and the Summer Isles and all these places where there's so many different races. There's a place called Yiti or something, I think he said, where there's like Asian people, you know, Japanese and Chinese descent kind of looking people. And you got like African people from the Summer Isles, and Sotheros is meant to be basically Africa. And then you got like the Latinos and stuff that are from Dawn and everything. There's so many like stories they could have, or like world. George Martin's world is so big that they could, if they really want to tell a diverse story, they could. But this is exactly my point. I think we are done with this video now. Thank you, my friend. Hopefully you don't, you know, copyright me, but I was just making a point. So yeah, they could have done, this is my point, they could have done, if they really wanted diversity, if they really wanted to do some representation, they could have done it with just focusing on those areas where black people and ethnic people exist in the Game of Thrones universe. They could have done that. It was there. George R. R. Martin gave it to them. But they wanted to do the long night. They wanted to cash in on the White Walkers. They wanted to, because this is before that season 8 fucked everything up. The White Walkers was shit in the season 8, so that ruined everything. But they wanted to do this, and it turns out it wasn't going to work out. They're trying to force, you can't have a story focused on white people and then try and force black people in, especially when you've already established that there was no black people in that time by the original series. You can't change the Starks black. It's not going to work out. You can't make the Lannisters black or female. Apparently, I heard Lan the Clever, one of the first people, the guy that started the Lannisters, they were going to turn him into a woman or something in this. It's just madness, man. Like, look, here's my thing, yeah? Here's the bottom line. If you want to tell old stories, whether it's comic books, written in the times where white people were in control, whether it's comic books, remaking old films, blah, 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 whatever it is, if you want to tell old stories in the modern day, but then you want diversity as well, you got to pick one. You can't have both, right? If you want diversity and representation, then you need to look into other new places. Hire Africans, hire black people that want to tell original black stories. Black Panther was a great start, you know. There's so many black films out there, but they don't get enough representation, ironically enough. They don't get enough push. We need to be able to see those films. We need to be able to make black people iconic, make black characters and African characters iconic, you know, rather than taking old iconic white characters, you know, and turning them black. You know, I said this already before in my old video about diversity. That was my tagline at the end, was let's make black heroes iconic rather than making iconic heroes black, you know, Oh man, but yeah, that's my thoughts on this, you know. If you want to know more about it, check out the guy's full video. His name is The Dragon Demands. I'll put the link in the description. Also, again, I want to stress that I don't know how true this all is. It's a leak, but this guy seems to, the way he was presenting it, it seems to like I've had some kind of inside information. Even if it's not true, yeah, and like this thing happens anyway. We've seen it before. We've seen stuff like this happen before anyway. You know, so it's just something good to like kind of remind you of how things are. And I just hope they do justice with the one they're actually going for, Fire and Blood prequel trilogy. Oh, trilogy? Fire and Blood prequel? Star Wars in my head. If they do that well, they can introduce Summer Isles. They can have black characters in that by putting them in Dawn, by having Summer Isles characters show up. They can do any of that. But anyway, that's my video. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm very curious about this one, what you guys will think. Hit the notification bell for notifications. Please subscribe. And also check out my video at the end of this video, which should come up right after this, about my Infinity War animated fan fiction. I want you to check that out. It's pretty good. I think you'll enjoy it if you like Avengers, and the sequel to that should be coming soon. Kind of soon. I'm in the middle of editing it, but doing this, you know, it's long. Anyway, I'll see you again. Peace. Only Thor, Tony, Panther, Peter Quill, Hulk and Doctor Strange are left alive. Thanos lifts his gauntlet in the air and says, "It's time to court death." The heroes look in horror at Scarlet Witch, thinking she's gonna die, and then Scarlet Witch out of nowhere says, "No more